In the world of Eberron, there's a lot of great unsolved mysteries, and many of these are well known to the people within the world and have a lot of influence on their daily lives. There's other mysteries, however, that are buried deep beneath the surface waiting to be uncovered. And just like in our world, no place is more mysterious and unexplored than the depths of the ocean. And it's here, deep beneath the waves, that creatures so powerful, so titanic, that learning more about them might actually reveal more about the truth of the creation of Eberron as a whole. Amongst the oceans of Eberron, the Thunder Sea is by far the most traveled. It's an essential trade route for the people of Corvair, Stormreach, and Arenal, but the Thunder Sea is not neutral territory. Its borders are enforced by the creatures that live beneath the surface, the Sahuagin of the Eternal Dominion. The Sahuagin of this empire have strict rules about when and where sailors can travel, but those who respect the Sahuagin's wishes find themselves traveling mostly unharmed. Many trade ships even employ sea speakers who know the Sahuagin language and can negotiate with any patrols that intercept them during their voyage. Very rarely, sea speakers or other diplomats from the surface world are granted an audience with the Sahuagin leaders in their home deep beneath the ocean. These surface envoys tell stories of traveling aboard dragon turtles and being taken deep underwater to a massive city on the ocean floor called Halcira. Halcira was illuminated by magically bioluminescent coral and was seemingly built around and into a massive slumbering creature. The city was wondrous, and the surface dwellers that visited reported seeing strange magical items and effects never before seen on the surface. Yet the strangest of these effects happened once they'd been shown to their rooms and they'd found sleep. These traders and diplomats found themselves having strange dreams when they fell asleep within the Sahuagin city. These dreams involved flying through the air, floating through endless plains of clouds, and fluttering along winged angelic creatures around them. It was later discovered that these travelers were actually indeed dreaming in the plane of Sirenia, the plane of air. See, normally in Eberron, when creatures have dreams, they're dreaming in a specific plane of existence, the plane of Delcor, the plane of dreams. This is a fundamental aspect of reality within Eberron, it's just how dreams work. Yet something about being within the proximity of this massive slumbering creature had affected their dreams so severely that it actually caused them to have dreams within another plane of existence entirely. Some of these diplomats and envoys even included Kalishtar and elves, species that shouldn't be capable of dreaming at all. It didn't seem possible, yet it happened. Arcane researchers and the Dragon-marked houses all jumped at the chance to study these creatures further and discover what their link to these planar energies might be. But all attempts at that have been fiercely shut down by the Sahuagin, who hoard that power and understanding for themselves. What is known is that these creatures are called Carlassa, and there seems to be one representing each of the planes of existence within Eberron. The Carlassa that the diplomats had seen when they visited Halcira seemed to be bound in some way to the plane of Sirenia, the plane of air, peace, and understanding. And that's suspected actually why the Sahuagin built their central hub for diplomacy and negotiation there. Even in the cruel and oppressive Eternal Dominion, a diplomat or ambassador actually does have a decent chance of getting their point across while within the city of Halcira. The very nature of dreaming every single night within a plane representing a particular idea does change a person, just subconsciously. So what they learned was that the area around the Carlassa sort of acts as a giant manifest zone to the plane that it's linked to, and its effects spill over and influence those who live there. Not only because they dream in that plane, but also just for the regular manifest zone effects that sort of thing can apply. So the Sahuagin who live in these cities find themselves forever changed because of the dreams that they have every night. The Sahuagin have built their cities into other Carlassa as well. In the city of Haldol, the city is built into a massive Carlassa representing the plane of souls. And it's here the Eternal Dominion has built a center for necromantic research, and the skulls of great leaders and priests from across the Empire are preserved for the purposes of speaking with the dead. In the city of Hal Laman, the Carlassa dreams in the plane of nature, so the Sahuagin who have built the city into it have used it to harbor great farms and centers for animal husbandry and biological study. Built into the Carlassa they call Hal Shavar is the military seat of the Dominion. This Carlassa represents the plane of war, and it looks like a massive draconic beast with steel scales. Here the Dominion trains their barons and military strategists in the ways of war, and they host gladiatorial fights here in a giant grand arena. These giant slumbering beasts are radiating planar magic from their respective planes, and the Sahuagin of the Eternal Dominion are literally harvesting it like a natural resource. They work tirelessly day and night harvesting bone, blood, and fleshy materials from these beasts for various arcane purposes. And because of the Carlassa's natural healing properties, even after thousands of years of harvesting, the Eternal Dominion hasn't even come close to making a dent in these creatures. Exploring Eberron tells us, All biomatter from the Karlasa is infused with arcane energy, and the Sahuagin use these substances in the same way that the Five Nations rely on dragon shards. In addition, the biomatter of each Karlasa has unique properties and potential due to the plane it's tied to. The scales of Hal Shavar can be forged into powerful armor and weapons. The steam breath of Hal Fur is an extremely powerful catalyst for evocation magic. The blood of Hal Keith is an exceptional conduit for transmutation. These are just a few examples of the potential of the Karlasa, and the Dominion itself is still discovering new uses for these resources. And it's worth noting that although the Sahuagin seem to harvest these creatures for their own benefit pretty mercilessly, they also seem to venerate these creatures. Amongst the Sahuagin are the Lasash, the Dream Priests. These priests teach that the Karlasa are divine gifts bestowed upon the Eternal Dominion, simultaneously divine beings and servants. The Dream Priests believe that it's their daily rituals and magics that actually keep the Dreamers from waking up and allows them to continue their harvest. Now, whether or not the Dream Priests are actually responsible for keeping these creatures asleep is a matter of some debate, and we'll never actually know the answer to that until the Lasash stop performing their rituals, which they've never done in thousands of years. Interestingly, each subsection of these Dream Priests is led by someone called an Orlasa, or the First Dreamer, and these First Dreamers are kept in a permanent comatose state, constantly dreaming alongside the Karlasa in its respective plane. Exploring Eberron goes on to tell us, the First Dreamer's spirit permanently resides in the Karlasa's dream, where they anchor a temple formed from their pure will. Dream Priests are trained in lucid dreaming, and they have these temples as a base for planar research and to maintain communication across the Dominion. While they reside in different planes, the temples are mystically linked through the Karlasa, and rituals allow the priests to spiritually travel between the dream temples, carrying messages to other cities. And it's in the dream of Hal Erie that the spirits of the Orlasa meet to coordinate the actions of the Dominion. This is the Shalasa, the Council of Dreams. So the Sahuagin have managed to master and attune to these Karlasa in such a way that's allowed them to actually master planar travel and understanding in a way that's far beyond anyone on the surface. And in fact, among some of the leadership of the Eternal Dominion, they even theorized that they might be able to use these temples as an anchor in which to conquer a layer of the planes. Now that's an unprecedented feat, but if anyone can do it, it's the Sahuagin with these massive dreaming Karlasa, an unprecedented force. And this only scratches the surface of what the Sahuagin are actually capable of doing with the biomatter that they harvest from these creatures. The Eternal Dominion can possess any number of unprecedented eldritch machines or magical capabilities that the surface has just never seen before. The biomatter of their Karlasa grants the Sahuagin a diverse set of resources, but even still there's some Karlasa that they refuse to settle on. Out of the 12 known Karlasa, the Sahuagin have shunned 4 of them, and abandoned all attempts at building settlements there. These 4 being the Karlasa that represent Mabar, the plane of undeath, Zoriat, the plane of madness, Thelanis, the plane of stories and the Fae, and Rizia, the plane of stasis and ice. Now, it's doubtful that the cruel and ambitious Eternal Dominion abandoned these Karlasa for any moral reason, so if they were capable of safely harvesting material from these Karlasa, they'd likely still be doing so. So that means that something about these 4 Karlasa in particular scared even the Eternal Dominion away. And I think for some of these we may be able to draw obvious conclusions. Rizia, for example, is a plane of ice and stasis. It's possible that the Sahuagin attempted to build cities here, but the Karlasa was surrounded by impenetrable solid ice. Or perhaps they even successfully attempted to settle on the Karlasa, only to find that constantly dreaming in a plane representing the idea of stasis stagnated all useful progress. Zoriat is the plane of change, madness, and the plane of breaking all of the rules of reality. So I think out of all of them, this one is the easiest to see how it could have all gone wrong. Any Sahuagin residing near the Karlasa would have likely been changed in their dreams just by visiting the plane of Zoriat, and any material harvested from this Karlasa was likely infused with energy that would have been dangerous and unpredictable. I have to imagine that the ruins of whatever the Sahuagin tried to build here would be a strange and scary place to visit, but it would be one filled with unprecedented magic. And then as for the Karlasa representing Mabar, the plane of undeath, well, we actually know what happened with that one. This Karlasa actually already had an occupant. In a sanctum built below the Karlasa is the lair of a kraken named Bastireth, who is currently building a legion of undead minions in preparation for an attack against the Eternal Dominion. Now, we don't know what exactly the Kraken's beef is with the Sahuagin, but it's possible that these two have been fighting for control over this Karlasa for some time, we just don't know. Now, as for why the Sahuagin might have abandoned the Karlasa representing Thelanis, well, that's a plane of the stories in the Fae. That one's a little more unclear. The Lannis isn't necessarily any more dangerous than some of the other planes, even the ones that the Sahuagin do harvest material from. The Lannis doesn't raise any giant red flags in the way that planes like Mabar or Zoriat do. In fact, the Lannis manifest zones are among the safest and most well-known in civilizations on the surface. The Archfey are actually very interactable and can be negotiated with in a lot of cases. So I imagine that maybe the Sahuagin did try to settle near this Carlassa and harvest material from it, but somehow something went wrong and they were expelled. Maybe the Carlassa itself had some sort of negative reaction to the Eternal Dominion when they arrived. Or maybe the storybook logic of the plane imposed some sort of moral or lesson on the Dominion that they were entirely unprepared to learn. It could have really been anything, but this is really one of the hardest ones to answer out of the 4. Now that gives us 12 known Carlassa. Theoretically, the 13th one would have been the Carlassa representing Dalcor, the Plane of Dreams. Now, the prevailing theory is that if a Carlassa did exist for this plane, it might have been destroyed when the Giants destroyed the 13th moon of Sira, expelling the plane of Dalcor from orbit. And you can learn more about that in our video, What Really Happened to Eberron's Lost Moon. But as far as that Carlassa, we really don't even know if it existed or ever existed, and if it did, we don't know what happened to it. There's really nothing known about the Carlassa representing the Plane of Dreams. But it is interesting because the Carlassa are called the Great Dreamers, and allow people to dream in other planes that are not Dalcor. So what would the Carlassa representing Dalcor have even done? It is curious to think about. So as far as the Carlassa themselves, what are they? Where do they come from? I mean, the Sahuagin have the most interaction with them and likely the greatest understanding of how they operate, yet it seems like even they don't have the answers of what their greater significance is. The creatures predate the Sahuagin, heck, they predate everything. Exploring Eberron tells us, not even the dragons of Arganessen know of the origins of the Carlassa. They've slept since the beginning of recorded history and are immune to all forms of divination magic. They could be creations of Kyber, trapped before they could rise to the surface, or they could have been crafted by Eberron to guard against some future threat. Perhaps they're young progenitors, and when they finally wake, they'll create new worlds. All that's known for certain is that the Carlassa are massive, immortal monstrosities, and that each one is bound to one of the planes. Now, whatever a Carlassa is, it predates all of the most powerful factions and forces of nature that we know of in Eberron. Whatever these things are, they're either fundamental aspects of creation, or the oldest living things in the world. And the Sahuagin have been able to use these creatures for unprecedented magical feats, such as mage breeding entirely new forms of life, like the Claw of Sharagon, a mighty Sahuagin warrior, and the Plasmid, a new kind of underwater mimic. The Sahuagin have created these things nearly from scratch, in ways that the people on the surface could never learn how to do simply because of the unprecedented magic that these Carlassa supply. Now, what's worth noting is that the Carlassa are beings of immense power. They've been slumbering for all of known history, but if they ever actually rose, they would be entirely unprecedented forces of nature. Most of these Carlassa are miles in length, and would be a world-changing event if one ever did emerge from the ocean. In fact, in exploring Eberron, they even suggest that if you use the Carlassa, if you have one rise up from the ocean, that it could stand in for Eberron's version of the Tarrasque. And the book even suggests that you could use the stat block of the Tarrasque to represent the Carlassa, as long as you add in some additional abilities to represent the plane that it's tied to. And it turns out the book actually provides a lot of those planar effects as well, so all it takes is a little bit of combining of those two resources to create a stat block for each of the Carlassa. And now, simply because I can't help myself, and for your convenience, I've actually compiled stat blocks for each of the Carlassa, along with the relevant planar effects that they would bring. All completely free, and you can find the link in the description if you want to see each of those. I've included one stat block for each of the Carlassa. Most of them are very similar, just with each of them tweaked a little bit to offer a little bit of the flavor from the plane that it represents. This includes an ability that would create a manifest zone within 13 miles of each of the Carlassa, and a unique thunderous bellow for each one to give it a little bit of unique flavor. So, what of the Carlassa? Where do they come from? Were they ever awake? What put them to sleep, and what happens when they wake up? Well, if the Sahuagin of the Eternal Dominion have anything to say about it, we may never find out. The Dream Priests there bet everything on being able to keep their Carlassa in their slumber, because it's the backbone of everything that they do. It's the backbone of the Dominion's advancement. But there are still other Carlassa out there that the Dominion does not have control over, at least 4 of them. And if any of them ever wake up, or are used in the wrong way by the wrong people, Eberron might all of a sudden learn a lot more about them, and the world might never be the same again.